Deuce Vaughn was ranked at number 44 on ESPN's top 100 players of the 2021 college football season. Somebody asked me at one point this offseason if Deuce Vaughn was too overlooked, if he was getting disrespected, and I actually pushed back and said, I think if anything, you'd have to go the other way, that it might be just a bit like there's, I love Deuce. He was fantastic. I think he's going to be a total star. He's a coach's dream. He obviously can play and is electrifying. But really, the Pro Football Focus stuff, where like they just love him up and they're putting him ahead of Breece Hall, who, by the way, was at number 9 on this list.
Okay, that was my next question.
Okay. Yeah, Breece Hall is number 9.
Where's that light breeze?
Breece Hall's number 9. Bijan Robinson's number 14. So Deuce was the third-ranked running back.
Okay.
I think 44th overall in a vacuum, if we're doing it like that, just 44th overall, that's not disrespectful at all. In fact, I think that's a lot of respect being shown to Deuce. If we do take it, though, and say, hey, third best running back in the league, and he's that far behind Bijan Robinson, now I'm starting to think, all right, I think Bishan Robinson is he is the better overall package, at least in terms of athleticism and skill and size to go along with what he has, but we know that doesn't really matter. You could have said that about a number of backs in the league when Darren Sproles was playing here at K-State, and the guy still rushed for almost 2,000 yards. So that doesn't really matter at the end of the day, and I do actually feel like, as much as we rip on Iowa State and Breece Hall, that's not my issue here on this list. He deserves to be top 10. He does. Bijan Robinson at 14 feels overhyped to me. I think Bijan Robinson is terrific, and if you're a K-State fan, there's not a whole lot that you can say credibly about Bijan Robinson after what he did to K-State in Manhattan, which was absolutely torch the Cats, unfortunately. He had, God, looking at this stat line, 9 carries for 172 yards and 3 touchdowns in Manhattan. He also had 3 receptions for 51 yards. So he had 12 touches for 223 yards against K-State in Manhattan. Now, a depleted defense, a COVID defense, Elijah Sullivan, a linebacker, was playing in the secondary like it was that kind of a day. But still, that was an obscene performance. But that's kind of the point. Bijan went for 9 for 172 against K-State. Then he had 10 for 183 against Colorado in the bowl game, in the Alamo Bowl. And that, I feel like, is what a lot of this is based on. The rest of the numbers were fine, but not over-the-top crazy like that. And, part of that is he was behind Kevontae Ingram to start the year last year. But I think he's gotten a bump from exploding in the last couple of games, one of which, I can't speak to Colorado's defense, but one of which was against a very COVID-depleted K-State defense. And he plays for Texas. So everybody wants to hype up the guy at Texas. You not only get the bump from wearing that uniform, but you get the bump from people assuming you're that talented. You must be an elite talent if you're going to Texas. I think Bijan Robinson is an elite talent. Don't get me wrong on that. But I think there's more being heaped on him than if he were wearing a K-State jersey, or even on the topic of Breece Hall, if he were wearing an Iowa State jersey. I think Breece deserves respect to be more than 5 spots above Bijan Robinson based on the body of work and just the skill level too, and just what has been proven. I would take Breece Hall over Bijan Robinson if you asked me today, and I wouldn't think twice about it. I need to see more from Bijan Robinson to be convinced that he would be better than Breece. So that is one thing that I would take some issue with on the list. And you can see the full list if you want to on my Twitter account, @JLKurtz. The highlights here, Spencer Rattler is number 1 for Oklahoma. He's the number 1 player in the country. Marvin Mims from Oklahoma is number 8, just ahead of Breece. And, to be honest, we could be nitpicky there, but if I'm Breece, I'd be offended by that. Marvin Mims, a big part of why he's number 8 is because of number 1. I think Marvin Mims is a great receiver. Oklahoma, I understand why you would give the next receiver in line that bump up, because we've seen what D.D. Westbrook and C.D. Lamb, it just continues year after year with Oklahoma and the receivers. I understand why that happens, but I would be looking around like, if I were Breece, being like, dude, I do this basically on myself. I play with a slightly overrated quarterback, and I have the body of work over multiple years in this conference. So I wouldn't be thrilled about that if I were Brees in Iowa State. But it's one spot, so I'm not going to sit here and beat that over the head too much. Brock Purdy at 29. You guys all know my feelings on Purdy. I do think he's overrated. I would have him more down in his teammate Charlie Kolar is at 51, who's a fantastic tight end, back-to-back first-team All-Big 12 tight end. I think that's more in the range where I would have Brock Purdy, somewhere in the 50s if I were doing that. So those are my real issues. I mean, anything that's like 50 and beyond, maybe Dante Stills from West Virginia belongs higher than 72. Those Stills brothers have been absolute beasts at West Virginia here since it seems like, first of all, there's been a Stills brother in school at West Virginia for 17 years. And for a while, obviously, it was both of them. Hung around for a long time, but extremely accomplished there. I would maybe argue for Dante Stills to go up higher. But minor issues, really, are what I have with this list. I don't think there's anything terribly egregious here.
No, and with the running backs, Bijan Robinson, I will consider that everything he did in 5 games. If you look at the averages, he would have potentially, in a full season, rushed for over 1,500 yards, if you look at the numbers. And, if K-State doesn't get blanked by Iowa State, he had I'm talking about Bijan Robinson, had a really great game against West Virginia. That was a game K-State couldn't do anything against West Virginia offensively. You're taking those differences of the two teams, of the two offenses, and Deuce had more, consistency game in, game out, because he did play all 10 games. You might see him a little bit higher on the list, but for what he did, I would say 44 is very fair. And I got to give Brees Hall the credit where credit is due as being probably the best running back in the Big 12.
I don't think there's a probably about it right now. I think he is the most complete running back in the Big 12. But I think Deuce may have a higher ceiling if he can get there, and he's got a lot of time to get there throughout his K-State career. Another takeaway you could have from this, Oklahoma had 5, Iowa State had 5, Texas 2, TCU 2, K-State 1, West Virginia 1. You've got 9 of the 16 players on this list coming from Group of 5 schools. 9 of the 16 best players in the Big 12 coming from Group of 5 schools. How about that? Who would have thought? Iowa State, Group of 5 schools, or Group of 5 school rather, with 3 more players than Texas. Funny how that works.